Welcome to What Is, where we take the things you see every single day and realize you actually have no idea what they are. Today we're talking about the stuff that defines your identity, drains your bank account for your salon visits, and occasionally clogs up your shower drain until it resembles a drowned swamp monster. We're talking about hair. But what actually is it? Is it alive? Why do we have it on our heads and not our palms? And why, for the love of all that's holy, does it decide to abandon some of us, including me, just as we're getting distinguished? Put on your favorite headband and adjust your toupee. We're going deep into the follicle. The biology of the multicolored strand. If you look at a strand of hair under a microscope, it's not just a string. It's a complex structure made predominantly of a tough, fibrous protein called alpha-keratin. This is the same stuff that makes up your fingernails, a bird's feathers, and a rhino's horn. So technically, your bangs are just floppy rhino horns. You're welcome. A hair is essentially a dead appendage. The only part that's actually alive is the root, buried deep within the dermis in a little pocket called the follicle. At the base of the follicle is the bulb, where the living cells divide and grow to build a new hair shaft. As the new cells are added at the bottom, the older cells are pushed out. As they move upward, they undergo a process called keratinization. They fill up with protein and die. By the time you see it, it's a corpse. You spend 3 hours at the hairdresser's essentially grooming a graveyard. The shaft itself has 3 layers. The medulla is the gooey center, though fine hair doesn't have one. The cortex is the middle layer, which provides strength and contains melanin that gives your hair color. Finally, the cuticle is the outer layer. A series of overlapping scales, like shingles on a roof. When the scales lie flat, your hair looks shiny. When they're ruffled, you look like you've been licked by a cow. Hair versus fur, the great semantic showdown. At this point, you might be looking at your golden retriever and wondering, is she hairy or am I furry? Chemically and structurally, there's absolutely no difference. Hair and fur are both made up of keratin. They both grow from follicles. If you took a strand of human hair and a strand of dog fur to a lab without any labels, the chemist would tell you they're the same material. The difference is purely linguistic and behavioral. We generally use the word fur to describe the coat of a non-human mammal that grows to a specific length and stays there. It's usually very dense and serves as a primary source of insulation. Hair, in the human sense, is what we call it when it seems to grow indefinitely, like the hair on your head, or some heads, or is more sparsely distributed. Think of it this way: fur is a uniform, hair is an accessory. Also, mammals with fur often have double coats, a soft undercoat for warmth and a coarse top coat for protection. Humans just have that one layer, unless you count that thick wool sweater that your aunt knitted you for Christmas. The naked ape, a tale of evolution. Humans are weird. We are the naked ape. Out of roughly 5,000 species of mammals, we are the only ones who opted for the mostly skin look. Why did we lose our fur? About 2 to 3 million years ago, our ancestors moved out of the shady forests and into the hot African savanna. We started running, a lot. Hunting, gathering, and generally trying not to be eaten by things with much better teeth than us. Fur is great for keeping you warm, but it's terrible for dumping heat. If you're a furry creature running in the midday sun, you overheat and collapse. Evolution made a trade-off. We traded our thick fur for a massive increase in eccrine sweat glands. To make that sweat effective at cooling us down, the fur had to go. We became the ultimate long-distance runners because we could sweat and evaporate heat directly from our skin. But wait, if we lost our fur to stay cool, why do we still have a thick mop of hair on our heads? Because the sun is a deadly laser. Your head is the highest point on your body, facing the direct rays of the sun. Without hair, your brain would literally cook. The hair on your head provides a built-in sunshade and a layer of air insulation to keep your most important organ at a stable temperature. As for the rest, we kept hair in places we needed to reduce friction, like the armpits, or places that we needed to trap pheromones to signal, hey, I'm an adult and I'm ready to mingle. Which brings us to the puberty perplex, body hair and gender. For prepubescent boys and girls, their body hair is almost identical. They both have vellus hair, that fine translucent peach fuzz that covers almost the entire body. Then puberty hits, like a freight train fueled by hormones. The primary driver here is androgens, specifically testosterone. Everyone has androgens, but men generally have much higher levels. These hormones tell the follicles in specific areas, the face, chest, arms and legs, to stop producing wimpy vellus hair and start producing terminal hair. Terminal hair is thick, dark and long. This is why biologically men tend to be hairier. Men and women actually have roughly the same number of hair follicles on their bodies. It's just that in women, more of those follicles stay in the peach fuzz phase, while men, the androgens turn them into lumberjack mode. Now let's talk about those weirdly specific spots. Eyebrows. Those are sweat gutters. They stop rain and perspiration from stinging your eyes. They're also vital for communication. Try having a conversation with someone who has shaved off their eyebrows. You won't know if they're surprised, angry, or just judging your life choices. Eyelashes. Sensors. They're like cat's whiskers for your eyes. If something touches them, your blink reflex kicks in before an object can scratch your cornea. Armpit and pubic hair. Aside from the friction reducing and pheromone trapping we mentioned earlier, they serve as a visual sign of biological maturity back in the days before we had ID cards and Tinder profiles. The shiny dome. Why do we go bald? Now we come to the part of the video that makes 50% of the population nervous. Male pattern baldness, or androgenic alopecia. It's a cruel irony of nature that the same hormone that makes hair grow on a man's chest and chin, dihydrotestosterone, or DHT, is the exact same hormone that kills the hair on his head. In people genetically predisposed to baldness, the follicles on the scalp are hypersensitive to DHT. Over time, the DHT causes the follicles to shrink, a process called miniaturization. The hair grows back thinner and shorter each cycle, until eventually the follicle produces nothing but microscopic peach fuzz, or closes up entirely. But why? Why would evolution want us to lose the protective sunshade on our heads? Scientists aren't 100% sure, but there are some fascinating theories. One theory suggests that baldness was an evolutionary signal of seniority and social status. A bald head might have signaled, I'm an experienced, mature male who has survived long enough to lose my hair, so you should probably listen to me. I like this theory. Did I mention that I'm bald? Another theory is the vitamin D hypothesis. As humans moved to colder climates with less sun, the bald head provided more surface area for the skin to absorb UV rays and produce vitamin D, which is crucial for bone health. So if you're losing your hair, don't think of it as going bald. Think of it as becoming a highly efficient vitamin D factory. And for the ladies, female pattern hair loss exists too, but it's usually thinning rather than a receding line. Mostly because women have much higher levels of aromatase, an enzyme that converts androgens into estrogens, protecting the follicles. The weird stuff. Before we wrap up, a few fast facts to win your next trivia night. 1. Hair is incredibly strong. A single strand can support about 100 grams of weight. If you can braid an entire head of hair together, you could theoretically support the weight of 2 African elephants. Please don't test this at home. 2. Your hair grows about half an inch per month. That's about 6 inches a year. It grows faster in the summer than in the winter because the heat stimulates circulation to the scalp. 3. You lose between 50 and 100 hairs every single day. This is normal. If you see hair in the drain, don't panic. Your follicles are just rebooting for the next growth cycle. 4. You cannot heal split ends. Remember, the hair is dead. Once the cuticle is shredded, no amount of expensive provitamin shampoo can sew it back together. You just have to cut it off and start over. So what is hair? It's a thermal regulator. It's a sensory array. It's a social signal. It's a remnant of our primate past and a canvas for our personal identity. It's a dead protein that we spend billions of dollars on every year to cut, to color, to curl, and occasionally to transplant. It's the most visible part of our biology, yet it's the part we understand the least in our day-to-day lives. Next time you're complaining about a bad hair day, just remember, your hair is actually a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, designed to keep your brain cool and your eyes clear, even if it's currently refusing to stay in a ponytail. Thanks for watching this episode of What Is. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of keratin, hit that like button and subscribe. Let us know in the comments, what is the one thing about your body you've always wondered about? Or any other what is questions you always wanted to know the answers to. Stay curious, stay hairy, or embrace the bold, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to What Is, where we take the world's most complicated topics and strip them down until they're slightly less confusing and significantly more interesting. Today we're talking about a 3-letter acronym that changed the world, defined a generation, and became one of the most misunderstood biological phenomena in human history. We're talking about HIV and its consequence, AIDS. Now, before you get flashbacks of that awkward health class in middle school, where the gym teacher tried to explain biology using a banana and a look of pure existential dread, don't worry. We're going deeper than that. We're going from the jungles of 1920s Africa to the neon-soaked panic of the 1980s, all the way to the future where this global killer might finally be out of a job. So let's start with the basics. What actually is it? If you ask the average person on the street the difference between HIV and AIDS, they'd probably give you a look that says, I know they're bad, and I think they're the same thing. But they aren't. HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. It's the guest who shows up at your house uninvited, raids your fridge, and then starts dismantling the security system. It's a retrovirus, which sounds like it should be wearing bell bottoms and listening to ABBA. But in reality, it means it's a type of virus that inserts a copy of its RNA genome into the DNA of a host cell, effectively hijacking the factory. Specifically, HIV has a type. It's obsessed with CD4 cells, also known as T helper cells. These are the generals of your immune system. They don't do the fighting themselves, but they give the orders. They tell the rest of the body when to attack a cold, a flu, or that questionable street taco you ate at 2 a.m. When HIV enters the body, it turns these T cells into virus-making factories. Eventually, the T cells burst and die, and the new viruses go out to find more T cells. It's a slow-motion coup d'etat. AIDS, on the other hand, stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. This isn't a virus, it's a condition. You don't catch AIDS, you develop it. It's the final stage of the HIV infection, where the immune system is so decimated, the generals are all dead, that the body can no longer fight off opportunistic infections. We're talking about rare pneumonias or cancers that a healthy body would laugh at, but become fatal when the gates are left wide open. Basically, HIV is the arsonist, and AIDS is the state of the building being completely on fire. But where did this arsonist come from? For a long time, the origin of HIV was a cocktail of urban legends, conspiracy theories, and, let's be honest, flat-out racism. Some people thought it was a lab leak, because humans love a good lab leak theory, while others blamed everything from contaminated vaccines to, well, let's just say some very creative ideas about monkeys. The truth is actually more mundane, yet somehow more cinematic. Scientists have traced the origin of HIV to SIV, simian immunodeficiency virus. This is a version of the virus that affects non-human primates. Specifically, the crossover happened with chimpanzees in Central Africa. Now, how does a virus go from a chimp in the jungle to a human in the city? It wasn't a romantic comedy, folks. It was the cut hunter hypothesis. At some point in the early 20th century, most likely around the 1920s, a hunter in the Congo was butchering a chimpanzee for bushmeat. A bit of the chimp's blood got into a cut on the hunter's hand. The virus made the jump, mutated to survive in a human host, and began its long, silent journey. Wait, the 1920s? How did we only hear about it in the 80s? Because HIV is the ultimate sleeper agent. It moves slowly. In the 1920s, the city of Kinshasa, in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo, was booming. It was a transport hub with railways and river travel. The virus hitched a ride on these routes, spreading quietly throughout the population for decades. It traveled from Africa to Haiti, and eventually around the late 60s or early 70s, it landed in the United States. It was like a biological time bomb, with a 50-year fuse. And in 1981, that fuse finally hit the powder keg. The first official cases weren't even called HIV. In June 1981, the CDC published a report about 5 young, previously healthy gay men in Los Angeles who had contracted a rare lung infection called PCP. Usually only people with severely compromised immune systems got this. At the same time, doctors in New York were seeing cases of Kaposi sarcoma, a rare skin cancer that usually only appears in elderly men of Mediterranean descent. But now it was appearing in young men, and it was aggressive. The medical community was baffled. The media, however, was quick to give it a name. And this is where we enter one of the darkest chapters in modern social history, the era of the stigma. Before it was officially named AIDS in 1982, some media outlets and even some researchers called it GRID, gay-related immune deficiency. This was a catastrophic mistake. By labeling it a gay disease, the public and the government essentially decided they didn't need to care. The early years of the epidemic were defined by a silence that was just as lethal as the virus itself. While thousands of people were dying, the Reagan administration famously didn't even say the word AIDS publicly for years. It was seen as a moral judgment rather than a medical crisis. This led to the 4-H Club. According to the stigma of the time, you were only at risk if you were one of the 4-H's. Homosexuals, heroin users, hemophiliacs, or Haitians. If you weren't on that list, you felt safe. If you were on that list, you were treated like a pariah. People were fired from their jobs. Landlords kicked tenants out. Families refused to touch their dying children. There were stories of hospital staff leaving food trays outside the doors of AIDS patients because they were afraid to enter the room. And then there was the myth of Patient Zero. You might have heard of Gaetan Dugas, a Canadian flight attendant who was long blamed for bringing the virus to North America. He was demonized in the press as a super spreader who did it on purpose. Decades later, genetic testing proved he was just one of many people who had it at the time. He wasn't the source. He was just a victim who happened to have a very organized address book that helped researchers track the spread. But the damage to his reputation, and the reputation of the LGBTQ+ community, was done. It took the death of celebrities like Rock Hudson and the heartbreaking story of Ryan White, a teenager who contracted HIV from a blood transfusion for his hemophilia and was banned from his middle school. These events finally started shifting the needle of public empathy. When Ryan White was kicked out of school, it showed the world that this wasn't about lifestyle choices. It was about a virus. And viruses don't have a moral compass. They don't care who you love, what you inject, or where you were born. They just want a host. Now, before we get into how we actually started winning the war against this virus and what the future looks like, we need to take a very quick break to help keep this channel running. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the things that shape our world, do us a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. It's the best way to make sure you don't miss our next episode. Already subscribed? Drop a comment below and let us know what topic we should tackle next. Okay, back to the science. By the mid-80s, we finally identified the virus, HIV. We had a test for it, but we didn't have a cure. An HIV diagnosis was essentially a death sentence. The first drug, AZT, was approved in 1987, but it was incredibly toxic and only worked for a short time before the virus figured out how to bypass it. The virus was smart. Because it mutates so rapidly, it could adapt to any single drug we threw at it. The breakthrough didn't come until 1996 with the introduction of HAART, highly active antiretroviral therapy. Instead of one drug, doctors started using a cocktail of 3 different drugs. This forced the virus to try and mutate in 3 different ways at once, which was much harder. Suddenly, people who were on their deathbeds were getting up and going back to work. HIV shifted from an acute fatal illness to a manageable chronic condition. Today we have something called U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. This is huge. It means that a person living with HIV who is on effective treatment can get their viral load so low that it doesn't even show up on a standard blood test. And if it's undetectable, they cannot pass the virus on to their sexual partners. We also have PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a daily pill that people who are HIV negative can take to prevent them from contracting the virus if they are exposed. It's over 99% effective. We went from everyone dies to you can live a long, healthy life and never pass it on in only a few decades. That's the miracle of modern science. But, and there's always a but, the stigma hasn't vanished. It's just mutated, much like the virus itself. In many parts of the world, and even in many parts of the US, people are still afraid to get tested because of the shame associated with the virus. Laws still exist in some places that criminalize people for living with HIV, based on outdated science from the 1980s. Even though we have the tools to end the epidemic, we could stop the spread tomorrow if everyone had access to testing, treatment, and PrEP. We don't. Because of the cost, because of the politics, and because of the lingering idea that this is a shameful disease. So what does the future look like? Are we ever going to find a cure? Well, actually we already have cured a few people. You might have heard of the Berlin patient, Timothy Ray Brown. He was the first person to be functionally cured of HIV. He had leukemia and required a bone marrow transplant. His doctors found a donor who had a rare genetic mutation, the CCR5 delta 32 mutation, which makes a person naturally immune to most strains of HIV. After the transplant, the new immune system wiped out the HIV in his body. Since then, a handful of others, the London patient, the Dusseldorf patient, have been cured using similar methods. Now, bone marrow transplants are incredibly dangerous and expensive. We can't just do that for all 39 million people living with HIV. But these cases prove that a cure is biologically possible. Researchers are now looking at gene editing, using CRISPR to snip out the HIV DNA right out of a person's cells. Others are working on an HIV vaccine using the same mRNA technology that gave us the COVID-19 vaccines. We are closer than we ever have been. We're living in the tail end of an epidemic that defined the late 20th century. HIV and AIDS taught us a lot about ourselves. It taught us about the incredible speed of scientific progress. It taught us about the resilience of the human spirit, the way activists fought for their lives when the world turned its back on them. But it also taught us about how easily fear can be turned into cruelty. The story of HIV isn't just a story about a virus. It's a story about how we treat the most vulnerable people in our society. It's a story about the difference between being a patient and being a person. As we look towards the future, what is HIV might be a question asked in a history class rather than a doctor's office. It's important to remember the journey it took to get here. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. If you found this helpful, or if you learned something that surprised you, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps YouTube realize that people actually like learning things. Don't forget to check out our other videos on medical mysteries, historical turning points, and many, many other things. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and see you next time. Imagine you're sitting in a classroom. The teacher writes a word on the board. Barcelona. Simple enough, right? Now imagine looking at that word and seeing it flip, spin, and rearrange itself into something unrecognizable. The letters won't stay still. They're dancing. And you're supposed to read this out loud in front of everyone. This isn't a magic trick. This isn't a nightmare. This is reality for millions of people around the world, every single day. Welcome to What Is, the show where we dive into the topics that shape our world. Today we're exploring one of the most misunderstood learning differences in existence, dyslexia. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's unravel this together. What exactly is dyslexia? Well, grab your dictionary, unless you have dyslexia, in which case just keep watching. Dictionary.com defines dyslexia as a learning disorder characterized by difficulty reading, especially in relation to phonological processing. But that's the clinical version. Let me break it down in plain English. Dyslexia is a neurological condition that affects how the brain processes language. It's not about intelligence. It's not about laziness. It's not about seeing letters backwards, though we'll get to that myth later. It's about the brain's unique way of handling written and sometimes spoken language. Dyslexia is actually very common. Researchers estimate that it affects roughly 15 to 20% of the population. That's 1 in 5 people. If you have a classroom of 30 students, statistically, about 6 of them have dyslexia. In a stadium of 50,000 people, that's 10,000 people processing language differently than you might expect. And here's the thing, dyslexia doesn't discriminate. It affects men and women, boys and girls, across all ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. Though research suggests it may be slightly more common in boys, recent studies indicate that girls might simply be underdiagnosed because they often develop coping strategies that hide their struggles. History. Now let's take a little trip back in time. The term dyslexia was coined in 1887 by a German physician named Rudolf Berlin. He was treating a young boy who had difficulty learning to read and write, despite having normal intelligence and vision. Berlin used the Greek words dys, meaning difficult, and lexis, meaning word, and thus dyslexia was born. But here's what I find fascinating. Descriptions of reading difficulties have been documented throughout history, long before we had a name for them. In 1896, a British physician named W. Pringle Morgan described a condition he called congenital word blindness. Imagine being called word blind in the Victorian era. Not exactly the most progressive terminology, but hey, they were trying. For decades, dyslexia was poorly understood. Many people believed it was a sign of low intelligence or even moral failing. Children with dyslexia were often punished for being lazy or slow. It wasn't until the 1970s and 1980s that researchers began to understand the neurological basis of dyslexia. using brain imaging technology to see exactly what's happening inside the heads of people with this condition. And what did they find? Well, it turns out the brains of people with dyslexia are actually wired a little differently. More specifically, the left hemisphere of the brain, the side typically responsible for language processing, shows reduced activity in people with dyslexia. The brain works harder to accomplish the same tasks, compensating by using other brain regions. Pretty remarkable when you think about it. These brains are actually working overtime just to do what most people do automatically. Symptoms and signs. Now let's talk about what dyslexia actually looks like in real life, because here's the thing, it's not the same for everyone. Dyslexia exists on a spectrum, and symptoms can vary widely from person to person. Some common signs include difficulty decoding words, meaning breaking down unfamiliar words into smaller pieces. Poor spelling is another big one, and I don't mean occasional typos. I mean consistently spelling words wrong, even after you've just written them correctly 2 lines above. Reversing letters like B and D, or P and Q, is common, though this is more typical in younger children and often evens out with age. Reading slowly and painfully is another telltale sign. People with dyslexia often read at a significantly lower level than their peers, not because they can't understand the material, but because decoding each word takes so much effort. And here's one that often gets overlooked: difficulty with oral language. Some people with dyslexia struggle to find the right word, or they might mispronounce words they know. They might also have trouble remembering sequences, like the months of the year, days of the week, or even phone numbers. Many people with dyslexia also have remarkable strengths. They're often creative thinkers, excellent problem solvers, and have exceptional spatial reasoning. Many are out-of-the-box thinkers who see connections others miss. More on that later. Causes. So what causes dyslexia? The short answer is, we know it's hereditary to a large degree. If you have a parent or sibling with dyslexia, you're significantly more likely to have it too. Studies suggest that genetics play a role in somewhere between 40 and 60% of cases. We haven't identified a single dyslexia gene. Instead, researchers believe multiple genes are involved, each contributing a small effect. It's not like eye color where you get one gene from mom and one from dad. It's more like height, a complex interplay of many different genetic factors. Beyond genetics, there are also prenatal and perinatal risk factors. Things like premature birth, low birth weight, and exposure to alcohol or drugs during pregnancy have all been linked to an increased risk of dyslexia. The actual neurological mechanism involves something called phonological processing. That's a fancy term for the ability to manipulate sounds in language. When you read, your brain needs to connect letters to their sounds, then blend those sounds into words. For people with dyslexia, this process is inefficient. The brain has to work much harder to make these connections. Think of it like a traffic jam in your brain. The information is trying to get through, but the pathways are congested. The cars, that's the language information, eventually arrive at their destination, but it takes longer and requires more effort. Alright, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Before we continue, if you're finding this information helpful, hit that like button and consider subscribing to What Is. We explore all kinds of fascinating topics just like this one. Next, we will look at types of dyslexia. Now here's something that might surprise you. There isn't just one type of dyslexia. Researchers and educators have identified several different subtypes, each with its own characteristics. Primary dyslexia is the most common type. It's neurological in origin and tends to run in families. This type affects the brain's ability to process phonemes, the individual sound units in language. People with primary dyslexia struggle most with decoding and spelling. Secondary or developmental dyslexia is believed to be caused by slight differences in brain development during the early stages of pregnancy. This type often improves with intervention and may diminish as children get older. Trauma dyslexia, as you might expect, occurs after brain injury or trauma to the area of the brain that controls reading and writing. This is actually quite rare and differs from the developmental forms of dyslexia we typically talk about. There's also something called dysgraphia, which specifically affects writing ability, and dyscalculia, which affects math skills. These are related but distinct conditions, though they often co-occur with dyslexia. Some researchers now talk about visual dyslexia, or surface dyslexia, which involves difficulties with whole word recognition. These individuals can sound out words perfectly well, but struggle to recognize common words instantly, like the or was. The important thing to remember is that everyone's experience with dyslexia is unique. Two people with dyslexia might have completely different strengths and challenges. It's not a one-size-fits-all condition. Diagnosis. So how do you know if you or someone you know has dyslexia? The formal diagnosis process typically involves a comprehensive evaluation conducted by a psychologist, educational specialist, or neuropsychologist. This evaluation usually includes tests of reading ability, spelling, phonemic awareness, and sometimes IQ tests to rule out other potential causes of learning difficulties. The goal is to determine if the person's reading difficulties are significant enough to qualify as dyslexia, and to identify their specific pattern of strengths and challenges. But here's the thing, not everyone gets formally diagnosed. Many people, especially adults, have lived their whole lives without knowing they have dyslexia. They just thought they were bad at reading, or slow learners. If you suspect you might have dyslexia, it's never too late to seek an evaluation. Understanding your own brain can be incredibly empowering. For children, early identification is crucial. The sooner dyslexia is identified, the earlier intervention can begin, and early intervention is remarkably effective. Treatment and support. Now for the million-dollar question, is there a cure for dyslexia? The simple answer is no, not in the traditional sense. Dyslexia is a lifelong condition, but here's the beautiful part. It can be managed, and with the right support, people with dyslexia can become highly successful readers and writers. The most effective interventions are typically multisensory, meaning they engage multiple senses at once: sight, sound, and touch. Programs like Orton-Gillingham, Wilson, and Barton have strong evidence bases and are widely used in schools and tutoring centers. These programs focus on explicitly teaching the relationship between letters and sounds. They break down reading into its component parts, building skills systematically from the ground up. And they use multiple modalities. Students might see a letter, say its sound, and write it simultaneously. Accommodations are also incredibly important. In schools, this might include extra time on tests, permission to use audiobooks, or being allowed to give oral presentations instead of written ones. In the workplace, accommodations might include text-to-speech software, flexible deadlines, or modified responsibilities. Technology has been a game changer for people with dyslexia. There are now countless apps and tools that can help with reading, writing, and organization. Text-to-speech and speech-to-text software, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and audiobooks have opened doors that were previously closed. But perhaps the most important support? Attitude. The way we talk about dyslexia matters. When parents, teachers, and peers believe in the potential of people with dyslexia, outcomes improve dramatically. Encouragement and patience go further than any app or program. Famous people with dyslexia. Let's talk about some incredibly successful people who have dyslexia. Because if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that dyslexia is not a limitation. It's a different way of processing the world. Let's start with some household names. Leonardo da Vinci, the Renaissance genius who painted the Mona Lisa. Many historians believe he had dyslexia. Albert Einstein, also thought to have had dyslexia. He didn't speak until he was 4 and was considered a poor student, but we all know how that turned out. In more modern times, we have Richard Branson, the billionaire founder of Virgin Group. He's been very open about his dyslexia and has said that it actually helped him succeed as an entrepreneur because he learned to delegate and trust his team. Actor and filmmaker Whoopi Goldberg has dyslexia. So does comedian and talk show host Jay Leno. Former Disney CEO Michael Eisner has talked about his struggles with dyslexia. And perhaps most surprisingly, rapper and entrepreneur Jay-Z has dyslexia and has said he avoided reading for years because of it. What do all these people have in common? They didn't let dyslexia define them or limit them. They found their strengths, worked around their challenges, and achieved extraordinary things. In fact, many people with dyslexia report having what they call dyslexic advantages. These can include exceptional creativity, strong visual thinking, out-of-the-box problem solving, and the ability to see the big picture when others get bogged down in details. Myths versus facts. Now let's address some of the most common myths about dyslexia, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Myth number 1. People with dyslexia see letters backwards. While some children do reverse letters temporarily, this is not a defining characteristic of dyslexia. Most people with dyslexia see letters just fine. The issue is with processing and connecting sounds to letters, not with visual perception. Myth number 2. Dyslexia is a sign of low intelligence. Absolutely not true. As we've discussed, many incredibly intelligent and successful people have dyslexia. In fact, with proper support, people with dyslexia can achieve at the highest levels. Myth number 3. Dyslexia can be cured. Sorry, but it's a lifelong condition. However, with appropriate intervention and support, the symptoms can be managed effectively, and many people learn to read and write quite well. Myth number 4. Only boys have dyslexia. False. While some studies suggested this was true, more recent research indicates that girls are simply underdiagnosed. Boys might be more likely to be identified because they often exhibit behavioral problems when they struggle in school, while girls tend to internalize their difficulties. Myth number 5. People with dyslexia can't learn to read. Completely false. With the right approach and support, virtually everyone with dyslexia can learn to read. It might take more time and effort, but it's absolutely possible. Living with dyslexia. Let's talk about what it's actually like to live with dyslexia, because the numbers and definitions are important, but the human experience is what matters most. Imagine being a child who loves stories, who loves being read to, who has a fantastic imagination, but who dreads reading aloud in class. Imagine the anxiety of a spelling test when you know you've studied, but the words just won't stay in your head. Imagine the embarrassment of reading a menu at a restaurant and mispronouncing something in front of your friends. For many people with dyslexia, these experiences shape their childhoods. The frustration and shame can be profound, but so can the resilience and strength that develop as a result. One thing that often gets overlooked is the emotional toll of undiagnosed or unsupported dyslexia. When you grow up being told you're lazy or stupid, when you work harder than everyone else but still fall behind, it takes a toll on self-esteem. Many adults with undiagnosed dyslexia struggle with anxiety or depression, rooted in years of feeling inadequate. That's why awareness matters. That's why understanding matters. When teachers, parents, employers, and peers understand dyslexia, they can offer the right kind of support. They can focus on strengths rather than constantly fixing weaknesses. They can celebrate progress rather than comparing to arbitrary standards. If you have dyslexia, or if you know someone who does, I want you to hear this. Your worth is not measured by your reading speed. Your potential is not limited by your labels. You have unique gifts to offer the world, and dyslexia is just one part of who you are. Support strategies. Let's finish up with some practical strategies that can help people with dyslexia succeed. First, embrace multisensory learning. Find ways to engage multiple senses when learning to read and write. Say words out loud while writing them. Use colored overlays or special fonts that reduce visual stress. Listen to audiobooks while following along with the text. Second, build on strengths. If someone with dyslexia is great at art, use that. If they're a whiz at building things, connect reading to those interests. When learning is relevant and engaging, it sticks better. Third, practice, practice, practice. But make it fun. Reading should not be a punishment. Find books on topics the person genuinely cares about. Graphic novels, magazines, comics, these all count and can help build reading fluency without the torture of boring assignments. Fourth, use technology. There's an app for almost everything now. Text-to-speech can help with reading comprehension. Speech-to-text can help with writing. Spell checkers and grammar assistants can catch errors. Don't fight the technology, embrace it. Fifth, advocate. If you're a parent, make sure your child's school is providing appropriate support. If you're an adult, advocate for accommodations in the workplace. You know your brain better than anyone. Don't be afraid to speak up. And finally, connect with others. There are communities of people with dyslexia everywhere, online and in person. Sometimes the most helpful thing is talking to someone who truly understands what you're going through. And there you have it, Dyslexia Explained. We covered what it is, its history, the different types, how it's diagnosed, and how to manage it. We debunked some myths and celebrated some successes. And I hope, more than anything, that you now have a better understanding of what it means to have a brain that processes language a little differently. If you took away one thing from this video, I hope it's this. Dyslexia is not a deficit, it's a difference. And in a world that needs all kinds of minds, the dyslexic mind is a valuable one. If you found this video informative and engaging, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to What Is. If you haven't already, we've got lots more fascinating topics coming up. And if you know someone who might benefit from this information, share it with them. Knowledge is power, and understanding is the first step toward compassion. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bonus fact. Did you know that the word dyslexia itself was almost alexia? The prefix a in Greek means without, while dys means difficult. Some early researchers thought alexia, meaning without words, was more accurate. But Rudolf Berlin, who coined the term, went with dyslexia because he felt it better captured the nuance that people with this condition aren't without language, but rather have difficulty with it. And just like that, a small Greek prefix decision shaped the terminology for generations. See you next time. You wake up one morning feeling like a truck has parked on your face, your muscles scream, your throat feels like sandpaper, and the simple act of lifting your head makes the room spin. You're not dying, just a few degrees away from feeling like a human furnace. That, my friends, is influenza. Today we're going to answer the question that's been nagging you since your last sneeze-filled Monday. What is influenza? We'll unpack the virus's secret life, its deadly past, why it keeps reinventing itself like a Hollywood star, and whether that flu shot is really worth the needle prick. We'll also sprinkle in a few jokes because, let's be honest, laughing at a virus beats coughing at it any day. The basics: what actually is the flu? Influenza, or the flu, is not just a bad cold that decided to overstay its welcome. It's a highly contagious respiratory illness caused by the influenza virus, a member of the Orthomyxoviridae family. Think of it as the VIP of viral infections. It arrives uninvited, causes a scene, and loves to linger. The virus comes in three main types, A, B, and C, plus a couple of exotic relatives that we'll barely mention, because frankly, they're not the life of the party. Type A is the flamboyant one. It infects humans, birds, pigs, even the occasional whale. It's responsible for most pandemics, like the infamous 1918 Spanish flu that turned the world upside down. Type B is the more modest sibling, circulating mainly among humans and causing seasonal outbreaks. Type C is the shy cousin, usually causing mild symptoms, hardly anyone notices it. Inside the virus's shell are two key proteins, hemagglutinin, HA, and neuraminidase, NA. HA is the key that lets the virus unlock our cells, while NA is the crowbar that helps the newly made viruses escape. The H and the N numbers you hear, H1N1, H3N2, are basically the virus's fashion statement, changing every season. A brief history. when the flu went global. The flu has a resume longer than most of our CVs. The earliest written accounts of flu-like pandemics date back to ancient Greece, but the one that really put the virus on the map was the 1918 Spanish flu. In a world still reeling from World War I, this strain swept across the globe in 3 waves, killing an estimated 50 million people, more than the war itself. Why so deadly? The virus carried a mutation that made it highly transmissible and unusually lethal, especially in young, healthy adults. The immune response that usually protects us went into overdrive, causing a cytokine storm that did more damage than the virus. It's a stark reminder that sometimes our own body can be the worst enemy. Since then, we've had Asian flu, 1957, Hong Kong flu, 1968, and the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, the latter being a remix of pig, bird, and human genes that jumped onto the world stage and said, "Hey, I'm back." Each pandemic taught scientists something new about how the virus swaps genetic material, what we call antigenic shift, and why we need updated vaccines every year. The virus's toolkit, how it invades and spreads. So how does this microscopic troublemaker travel? The flu is a master of public transportation. It hitches a ride on tiny droplets that an infected person spews when they cough, sneeze, or even just talk. Those droplets can land in your nose, mouth, or eyes. Basically, any entry point you have. The virus also loves a good handshake, or rather, a contaminated surface. If someone with the flu touches a doorknob and you follow suit, then rub your eyes, you've just given the virus a free ticket to your respiratory tract. One of the flu's favorite tricks is viral shedding. Infected people can start spreading the virus about a day before they even feel sick, making the flu the ultimate silent party crasher. That's why you can't always blame the co-worker who sneezed at the meeting. They might have been contagious before they realized they were under the weather. Symptoms: more than just a runny nose. Okay, you've caught it. What now? Flu symptoms typically hit like a thunderbolt. Fever, often above 38 degrees Celsius, that's 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Chills, a dry cough, sore throat, muscle or body aches, headache, and a general feeling that you've been hit by a meteor. Fatigue can be so intense, you might think you've been binge-watching your favorite show for 48 hours straight. Unlike the common cold, the flu can also bring vomiting and diarrhea, especially in children, and can lead to serious complications like pneumonia, bronchitis, or sinus infections. If you have underlying conditions, asthma, heart disease, pregnancy, or a weakened immune system, the flu can become a much bigger problem, sometimes requiring hospitalization. One classic flu hallmark: you feel fine 1 minute and then bam, the fever spikes, you break into a sweat, and suddenly you're searching for the nearest blanket. The rapid onset is a clue. If you wake up feeling like you've been turned inside out, it's probably the flu, not just a cold. If you're loving this deep dive into the flu, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what your biggest flu myth is. And if you want more myth busting, check out our playlist. Your brain will thank you. Inside the body, the immune showdown. Once the virus slips past your nose's defenses, it hijacks your cells, turning them into virus-producing factories. Your immune system, ever the vigilant bouncer, springs into action. It releases cytokines, chemical messengers that sound the alarm, recruit immune cells, and cause that familiar fever and aches. The battle can be messy. In some people, especially the young and healthy, the immune response goes into overdrive, producing a cytokine storm that can damage tissues, leading to severe illness. That's why some perfectly healthy 30-year-olds ended up in the ICU during the 1918 pandemic. Meanwhile, your body starts producing antibodies that recognize the HA and NA proteins. Those antibodies are like the VIP passes that keep the virus out next time, provided the virus doesn't change its outfit, antigenic drift. That's why the flu vaccine needs an update each year. The virus is constantly changing its costume to slip past your immune memory. Treatment: what actually works? If you're already under the weather, here's the good news. Most people recover with rest, fluids, and over-the-counter meds that treat the symptoms. Think ibuprofen for fever, cough suppressants, and plenty of soup. Yes, Grandma's chicken soup may not be a miracle cure, but it does hydrate, provides easy-to-digest nutrients, and the warmth can soothe a sore throat. Plus, it's a psychological boost. Comfort food is real. But if you're in a high-risk group or you catch the flu early, antiviral drugs can step in. Oseltamivir, Tamiflu, Zanamivir, Relenza, and the newer baloxavir, Xofluza, can shorten the illness by a day or two if taken within 48 hours of symptom onset. They work by blocking the virus's NA protein, essentially stealing its crowbar so the virus can't escape the infected cells. Important, antibiotics do not work against the flu. They target bacteria, not viruses, so unless your doctor suspects a secondary bacterial infection, you're better off skipping them. Prevention, your best defense. Now let's talk staying healthy. The most powerful tool in your arsenal is the annual flu vaccine. It's designed each year based on the strains scientists predict will be circulating. Even when the match isn't perfect, the vaccine often gives partial protection that can make the disease milder and reduce the risk of complications. Getting vaccinated also helps protect those around you. Elderly relatives, pregnant friends, newborns, who might not respond as well to the vaccine. It's like a group hug for your community's immune system. Beyond the shot, simple hygiene habits go a long way. Wash your hands with soap for at least 20 seconds. Sing happy birthday twice, though maybe not in a public restroom. Avoid touching your face and stay home when you're sick. If you're in a crowded place and someone is coughing, a mask can be a surprisingly stylish accessory that also blocks droplets. And if you're wondering whether the flu shot can give you the flu, here's the punchline. The vaccine is made from inactivated, dead virus, or just a piece of the virus, so it cannot cause influenza. You might feel a bit sore or run a low-grade fever, but that's your immune system doing a little rehearsal, not the actual disease. Myths busted. What the flu is not. Let's clear up some old wives' tales. Myth number 1. The flu is just a bad cold. Reality. While both are respiratory viruses, the flu hits harder, lasts longer, and can lead to serious complications. It's like comparing a drizzle to a hurricane. Myth number 2. You can catch the flu from the vaccine. Reality. As we just said, the vaccine is inactive. You're not getting a live virus, so you won't get the flu from the shot. Myth number 3. If I'm healthy, I don't need a vaccine. Reality. Even healthy adults can spread the flu to vulnerable populations. Plus, nobody wants to spend a week in bed when a simple shot could prevent it. Myth number 4. Antibiotics will cure the flu. Reality? Nope. They work on bacteria, not viruses. Overusing antibiotics contributes to resistance, a problem for everyone. The bigger picture, why the flu still matters. Every year, the flu accounts for billions of dollars in healthcare costs, missed workdays, and lost productivity. In the United States alone, the flu leads to up to 45 million illnesses and tens of thousands of deaths annually. Globally, the toll is even higher, especially in low-resource settings where access to vaccines and antivirals is limited. The flu also reminds us that we live in an interconnected world. A virus that pops up in one corner of the globe can hop on a plane and spread across continents in a matter of days. That's why global surveillance, vaccine development, and public health coordination are so crucial. Let's wrap this up, shall we? Influenza is a cunning RNA virus that comes in several flavors, A, B, and C. Type A is the troublemaker behind most pandemics, while B keeps things interesting each flu season. It spreads through droplets and contaminated surfaces, attacks quickly, and can leave you feeling like you've been hit by a freight train. The flu's ability to mutate through antigenic drift and shift means we need a new vaccine each year. Vaccination, good hand hygiene, and staying home when you're sick are the best defenses. Antiviral meds can help if you start them early, but rest, fluids, and grandma's soup are the timeless staples of recovery. And remember, The flu isn't just a bad cold. It's a serious public health issue that demands our respect and our annual shot. If you enjoyed this deep dive into influenza, hit the like button, drop a comment with your favorite flu fighting tip, and subscribe to What Is for more stories that unravel the mysteries of science, health, and the world around us. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, check out our other videos. Thanks for watching, stay healthy, and as always, keep curious. See you next time. Imagine waking up every morning with weights strapped to your arms, your legs, your chest. You open your eyes, and the ceiling you've seen 1,000 times looks foreign, like you're seeing it for the first time, but not in a good way. The sun is shining, birds are singing, and someone somewhere is genuinely excited about Tuesday. That's not Tuesday. That's depression. Today we're talking about something that affects more people than you might think, because the odds are pretty high that either you or someone you know has experienced it. We're diving deep into depression, what it is, what it looks like, how common it really is, what triggers it, the different types, myths versus facts, treatment options, and how to help a friend or yourself. This is What Is. Let's get into it. What is depression? Alright, let's start with the basics. What actually is depression? Depression is more than just feeling sad or having a bad day. It's a mental health disorder that affects how you feel, think, and handle daily activities. To be diagnosed as major depressive disorder, symptoms must be present for at least 2 weeks, and they have to significantly impact your life. We're talking about a persistent feeling of emptiness, hopelessness, or just nothing. Yeah, nothing. Sometimes depression isn't feeling too much, it's feeling nothing at all. The clinical definition? Depression is a mood disorder characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, loss of interest, and a range of other emotional and physical symptoms that interfere with daily life. Now here's where it gets interesting. Depression isn't a one-size-fits-all experience. It doesn't look the same for everyone, and that's part of why it's so misunderstood. What does depression actually look like? So what does depression actually look like? Grab your coffee. Actually, maybe don't, because you might not have the energy to lift it. We'll get to that. Depression looks like someone who still goes to work, still smiles in photos, still says I'm fine when asked how they're doing. That's the thing about depression. It's an invisible illness. You can't always see it. The symptoms vary, but let's break them down. Emotional symptoms include persistent sadness, anxiety, or emptiness, feeling hopeless or pessimistic. Irritability. Yeah, depression can make you angry, which surprises a lot of people. Guilt, worthlessness, and difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. Physical symptoms are where it gets tricky. Changes in appetite, either not eating or eating everything in sight. Sleep disturbances, insomnia, or sleeping too much. Fatigue and loss of energy. Physical aches and pains that don't seem to have a medical cause. And movements, either restlessness or speaking and moving slower than usual. Behavioral symptoms might include withdrawing from friends and activities you once enjoyed, neglecting responsibilities, decreased productivity, and in severe cases, thoughts of death or suicide. Here's something important. Not everyone with depression experiences all these symptoms, and the severity matters. Some people function reasonably well with depression, holding down jobs, maintaining relationships, while others struggle to get out of bed. There's a meme that floats around the internet. Depression is wanting to do things, but not being able to do them. And honestly, that's pretty accurate. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's a legitimate medical condition that makes everything, from showering to answering a text, feel like climbing Everest in flip-flops. How common is depression? How common is depression? Let me throw some numbers at you. According to the World Health Organization, more than 280 million people worldwide have depression. That's roughly 3.8% of the global population. In the United States alone, the National Institute of Mental Health reports that approximately 21 million adults had at least one major depressive episode in 2021. That's about 8.3% of the adult population. Let me put that in perspective. If you gathered 100 random people in a room, about 8 of them would have experienced depression in the past year. Maybe that's your book club. Maybe that's your fantasy football league. Maybe that's your family Thanksgiving dinner. Women are nearly twice as likely as men to experience depression, though researchers are still figuring out why. Some theories point to hormonal differences, societal pressures, and differences in how men and women report symptoms. Because let's be real, men are historically less likely to seek help due to stigma. Depression can affect anyone, regardless of age, race, or background, but certain groups face higher rates. LGBTQ+ youth, for example, experience depression at significantly higher rates than their heterosexual peers. People with chronic illnesses also face elevated rates. So if you're dealing with depression, know this: you are not alone, not even close. What triggers depression? Here's the thing: depression doesn't always have a clear cause. Sometimes it just shows up, like an uninvited guest who won't leave. But there are common triggers and risk factors. Biological factors play a role. Family history increases your risk. Imbalances in brain chemicals, specifically serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, contribute to depression. And your physical health matters. Chronic conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and thyroid disorders are linked to higher depression rates. Psychological factors include low self-esteem, being overly critical of yourself, having a pessimistic worldview, and a history of trauma or abuse. Environmental and social factors are huge. Major life changes, good or bad, can trigger depression. Job loss, divorce, the death of a loved one, even positive changes like getting married or having a baby can be stressors. Chronic stress, isolation, and lack of support systems matter. Substance abuse both contributes to and results from depression in a vicious cycle. And here's one that surprises people: seasonal changes. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is a type of depression related to reduced sunlight in fall and winter. So if you feel gloomier when it's grey outside, science says that's valid. The triggers aren't always obvious. Sometimes depression sneaks up gradually, building over months or years until you suddenly realize you can't remember the last time you felt okay. Types of depression. Let's talk about the different types of depression, because just like ice cream comes in flavors, so does depression. Major depressive disorder is what most people think of when they hear depression. It's characterized by severe symptoms that interfere with daily life for at least 2 weeks. This is the classic version: intense sadness, loss of interest, all the symptoms we discussed. Persistent depressive disorder, dysthymia, is a milder but longer lasting form. Symptoms are less severe, but persist for 2 years or more. It's like depression with a subscription plan. It just keeps going. Bipolar disorder involves alternating episodes of depression and mania, periods of extremely elevated mood, energy, and activity. Sometimes the depressive episodes are indistinguishable from major depressive disorder, which is why bipolar disorder is often misdiagnosed. Seasonal affective disorder we just mentioned, depression that follows a seasonal pattern, typically worsening in winter. Postpartum depression affects new mothers after childbirth. It's not just the baby blues, which are milder and short-lived. Postpartum depression is more severe and can interfere with mother-infant bonding and daily functioning. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder is a severe form of premenstrual syndrome that involves depressive symptoms in the week or 2 before menstruation. Atypical depression is a subtype with specific symptoms like significant weight gain, increased appetite, sleeping excessively, and mood reactivity, meaning your mood can improve in response to positive events. Melancholic depression is a severe form with distinct symptoms: loss of pleasure in all activities, distinct quality of depressed mood, worse in the morning, early morning awakening, and physical symptoms like excessive guilt. Psychotic depression combines severe depression with psychotic symptoms like delusions or hallucinations. That's a lot. But the takeaway is, depression isn't monolithic. It shows up in different ways for different people, which is why treatment isn't one size fits all either. Before we move on, if you're finding this video helpful, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, because there's more good stuff coming. And if you know someone who needs to see this, share it with them. Mental health info is for everyone. Okay, let's keep going. Myths versus facts. Now let's address some myths versus facts, because there's a lot of garbage information floating around out there. Myth: depression is just being sad or lazy. Fact: depression is a medical condition, not a choice or a character flaw. You can't just cheer up any more than you can cheer up someone with diabetes. The National Institute of Mental Health clearly classifies it as a serious mental illness. Myth: only weak people get depressed. Fact: depression doesn't discriminate. It affects people of all ages, backgrounds, and strength levels. Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Princess Diana, Jim Carrey. They all reportedly experienced depression. Being strong doesn't make you immune. Myth: depression is just a phase. You'll get over it. Fact: for some people, depression may resolve relatively quickly with treatment. But for others, it's a chronic condition that requires ongoing management. Comparing your experience to someone else's is like comparing apples to existential dread. Myth: talking about depression makes it worse. Fact: actually the opposite is true. Suppressing emotions tends to worsen mental health. Talking about depression reduces stigma and helps people seek help. There's a reason therapists exist. Myth: antidepressants are addictive or change your personality. Fact: antidepressants aren't addictive in the way substances are. They don't create cravings or physical dependence. They also don't change your personality. They help you feel more like yourself again. And the zombie trope? That's more fiction than fact, though finding the right medication can take time. Myth: you need to have a reason to be depressed. Fact: depression doesn't always have an obvious cause. Sometimes it's purely biological. You could have the perfect life, a great job, loving family, adequate serotonin, and still struggle. That's the nature of the beast. Myth: depression only affects women. Fact: while women are diagnosed more frequently, men experience depression too. Men are just less likely to seek help due to societal expectations, which is why male depression often goes unreported and can have devastating consequences. These myths matter because they prevent people from seeking help. They create shame where there should be understanding. So let's do our part in spreading facts, not fiction. Treatment. Let's talk treatment. Because depression is treatable. That's important to say out loud. Depression is treatable. Psychotherapy, or talk therapy, is one of the most common treatments. Types include cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT helps identify and change negative thought patterns and behaviors. It's like training your brain to think differently, kind of like installing new software. Interpersonal therapy focuses on improving relationships and communication skills. Psychodynamic therapy explores how past experiences and unconscious patterns affect current behavior. Medication is another option. Antidepressants work by balancing brain chemicals. SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are commonly prescribed. Drugs like Prozac, Zoloft, and Lexapro. SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, atypical antidepressants, and other classes exist too. Finding the right medication can take time. It's often a process of trial and error. Lifestyle changes aren't a replacement for professional treatment, but they can help. Regular exercise, which releases endorphins and improves brain health. Sleep hygiene, getting consistent, quality sleep. Balanced nutrition, reducing alcohol and drug use, mindfulness and meditation practices, setting small, achievable goals. Alternative and complementary treatments include things like light therapy for seasonal affective disorder, acupuncture, and yoga. These work best alongside traditional treatment, not instead of it. For severe depression, more intensive options exist. Electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, is highly effective for treatment-resistant depression, and transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, is another option. The most important thing about treatment: there's no one-size-fits-all. What works for your neighbor might not work for you, and that's okay. Finding the right treatment is a journey, but it's a journey worth taking. How to help a friend or yourself. This is the section that might matter most. How do you help a friend with depression or yourself? How to help a friend. First, educate yourself. Learn about depression so you understand what your friend is going through. The more you know, the better you can support. Listen without judgment. Don't try to fix their problems or offer unsolicited advice. Sometimes people just need to be heard. Ask open-ended questions. How are you really feeling? And actually listen to the answer. Check in regularly. Depression can make people feel isolated. A simple text, "Hey, thinking of you," can mean the world. Encourage professional help. Offer to help them find a therapist or doctor. Maybe even go with them to an appointment if they want support. Watch for warning signs. If your friend talks about wanting to die, gives away possessions, or shows sudden improvement after a period of depression, seek help immediately. These could be signs of suicidal ideation. Take care of yourself. Supporting someone with depression can be emotionally draining. Make sure you have your own support system. And here's a big one. Don't say things like, "It could be worse," or "Just think positive," or "Everyone gets sad." Trust me, they know. How to help yourself. If you're the one struggling, first, be gentle with yourself. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're dealing with a medical condition. Start by talking to someone. A doctor, a therapist, a trusted friend. Professional help is not weakness, it's strength. Be patient with treatment. Finding what works takes time. If the first therapist or medication doesn't feel right, try another. It's like dating. You might need a few tries. Set small goals. Getting out of bed can be a win. Showering can be a win. Sometimes surviving the day is enough. Limit isolation, even when you don't want to be around people. Force yourself to do social activities, even briefly. Connection matters. Move your body, even a little. You don't need to run a marathon. A 10-minute walk can help. Challenge negative thoughts. When your brain tells you things like, "I'm worthless," or "Everyone would be better without me," recognize those as symptoms, not truths. And here's a hard one. Reach out when you're struggling. Let someone know you're not okay. You don't have to carry it alone. If you're in crisis, please reach out immediately. In the US, call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You're worth saving. If any of this resonated with you, please know that help is available. You don't have to figure this out alone. Talk to a doctor, a therapist, a trusted friend. There are people who want to help. If you know someone who might be struggling, check in on them. Ask how they're really doing. Sometimes asking twice makes all the difference. And if you're struggling right now, you're not alone. Depression lies to you. It tells you that nobody cares, that you're a burden, that it won't get better. Those are lies. The truth is, you matter. Your life has value, and things can get better. Now for the fun part. Let's end with a bonus fact. There's a phenomenon called depression contagion, or emotional contagion in social networks. Research shows that depression can spread through social connections, like a cold, but for your mood. A 2009 study published in the journal Archives of General Psychiatry found that depression spread through social networks, with people more likely to become depressed if their friends, siblings, or spouses were depressed. The effect extends up to 3 degrees of separation, so your friend's friend's friend could influence your mental health. On the flip side, happiness also spreads, and community connection, and support can create a protective buffer. So surrounding yourself with positive, supportive people isn't just nice, it's actually good for your mental health. Choose your circle wisely. That's it for today, everyone. Thanks for watching What Is. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might need it. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves and each other. You're a slice of bacon on a summer frying pan. The sun is the stove, the heat is the oil, and you're about to get flipped. Except there's no chef to rescue you. That sizzling feeling you get after a few minutes under a blazing sky? That's the universe giving you a sneak preview of heat stroke, the most dramatic, not so fun way your body decides to turn itself into a human sous vide. Now, before you start wondering whether you should add salt and pepper, let's get one thing straight. Heat stroke isn't a culinary delight. It's a medical emergency that can scramble your brain faster than you can say, "I'll have my coffee iced." In this video, we're going to break down exactly what heat stroke is, why it happens, how to spot it, and most importantly, what you can do to avoid becoming a human toast. Grab a cold drink, find a shady spot, and let's dive in. We promise, after this video, you'll be able to spot heat stroke faster than you can spot a melt-in-your-mouth ice cream on a hot sidewalk. Heat stroke is the most severe form of hypothermia, which is just a fancy way of saying your core body temperature has risen above the safe zone. Normally, your body keeps its internal thermostat around 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, thanks to a network of sweating blood flow adjustments and the occasional complaint from your brain. When the external heat load overwhelms these cooling mechanisms, your temperature can skyrocket to 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, or higher, and that's when things get dangerous. At these temperatures, proteins in your cells start to denature. Think of them as tiny origami that lose their shape, and that can cause organs to malfunction, including the brain. In extreme cases, the heat can cause proteins in your cells to denature, meaning they lose their shape and function, like a folded paper airplane that's been unfolded into a crumpled mess. When proteins can't do their jobs, organs such as the heart, kidneys, and brain can start to fail, leading to potentially permanent damage. In medical terms, heat stroke is defined as a core body temperature above 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, accompanied by central nervous system dysfunction, such as confusion, seizures, or coma, often after exposure to a hot environment or strenuous activity. It's not just a bad case of sunburn, it's a full-blown medical emergency that can cause lasting damage or even death if left untreated. The key difference from other heat-related illnesses like heat exhaustion is the presence of altered mental status and the severity of the temperature rise. So what pushes your body over the edge? The recipe for heat stroke usually has three main ingredients: high ambient temperature, high humidity, and a heavy workload. When the mercury climbs above 32 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity makes the air feel like a wet blanket, your sweat can't evaporate efficiently, and your cooling system stalls. High humidity is especially tricky because it prevents sweat from evaporating, leaving you feeling like you're wrapped in a wet towel that never dries. Throw in a vigorous activity, like running a marathon, chopping wood, or trying to beat your high score on a treadmill, and your body generates extra heat on top of what's coming from the environment. Dehydration is the secret sauce that ties everything together. When you're low on fluids, your blood volume drops, reducing the ability to transport heat to the skin. Alcohol is another sneaky ingredient. It messes with your perception of heat and impairs sweating, making you less aware that you're cooking. Certain medications, such as beta blockers, diuretics, or anticholinergics, can also sabotage your cooling mechanisms. And if you're a child or an older adult, your body's thermostat isn't as sharp, so you're more likely to overheat. In short, it's a perfect storm of external heat, internal heat, and a few bad choices. Now, how do you know when you've crossed from "I'm a little warm" to "I'm in trouble"? The hallmark of heat stroke is a core temperature above 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, but you won't have a thermometer handy on a hiking trail. Luckily, your body sends out some pretty loud alarm bells. One of the first signs is altered mental status. You might feel confused, irritable, or start speaking in tongues. Literally, you could slur your words or lose the ability to concentrate. You might also experience dizziness, nausea, or a headache that feels like a drum solo in your skull. Your skin can give you a clue too. In classic or dry heat stroke, the skin is hot and dry because sweating has stopped, a sign that your body's cooling system has crashed. In exertional heat stroke, the skin is often moist, even clammy, because you're still sweating but can't keep up with the heat. Kids are also prone to showing less obvious signs. They may become unusually cranky, refuse a drink, or have a flushed face, so keep a close eye. Other red flags include a rapid heartbeat, over 130 beats per minute, rapid shallow breathing, and low blood pressure. In severe cases, you might have seizures, collapse, or slip into a coma. If you see someone with these symptoms, especially after being in the heat, assume it's heat stroke until proven otherwise. Quick action can be the difference between a funny story to tell friends and a trip to the ER. It's easy to confuse heat exhaustion with heat stroke, but the distinction could save a life. Heat exhaustion is the milder cousin. Your temperature is elevated, usually below 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and you still sweat. You'll feel weak, have a headache, nausea, and maybe some cramps, but your brain is still mostly functional. Heat stroke, on the other hand, is the dangerous version where your core temperature spikes and your brain starts to misfire. The skin may be dry or sweaty, but the mental changes are the key clue. Bottom line, if the person can't think straight, you're dealing with heat stroke. If you're enjoying this deep dive into heat stroke and want to see more life-saving tips, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, drop a comment below telling us your hottest summer story. We love hearing from you. Press the bell icon so you won't miss the next video. Not everyone has the same risk of winding up as a human oven. Certain factors turn up the heat. Age is a big one. Infants and toddlers don't sweat as efficiently, and older adults have less robust thermoregulation. Chronic health conditions like heart disease, obesity, or diabetes can impair the body's ability to handle heat. Medications that affect blood pressure or sweat production, think beta blockers, diuretics, antipsychotics, can also tip the scale. Alcohol, especially when consumed in the sun, is a double whammy because it dehydrates you and blunts the thirst signal. A lack of acclimatization is another sneaky factor. If you move from air-conditioned offices to a hot climate without a gradual build-up, your body never learns to cool itself efficiently. The good news is you can keep heat stroke at bay with a few simple tricks. First, stay hydrated. Drink water before you feel thirsty, because by then you're already a bit behind. Aim for at least 1 cup, 240 milliliters, every 20 minutes when you're active in the heat. Second, dress for the occasion. Light-colored, loose-fitting clothes made of breathable fabric. Let air do its job. Technical fabrics that wick moisture away from the skin are great, but avoid cotton that stays damp. Wet cotton can actually trap heat like a blanket. A wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses are the stylish accessories of choice. Third, time your activities wisely. Save your jog, hike, or outdoor yoga for the cooler parts of the day, early morning or late evening. If you must be out at noon, take frequent breaks in the shade and consider using a fan or a portable misting fan. Fourth, don't skip the acclimatization. If you're heading to a hot destination, give your body a week to adjust by gradually increasing your exposure. Finally, keep an eye on your buddies. If they start looking like they're auditioning for a zombie film, check for signs of heat illness and act fast. If you suspect someone has heat stroke, act fast. This is a medical emergency. Call emergency services right away. While you wait for help, move the person to a cooler spot, ideally an air-conditioned room or at least a shaded area. Remove any excess clothing to help heat escape. Start cooling them rapidly. Apply ice packs or cold water to the neck, armpits, and groin. These are the body's cooling hotspots. If you have a tub or a bucket, You can immerse them in cool, not ice-cold water, but be careful not to cause shivering, which can generate more heat. Never use ice-cold water directly on the skin for a long time. It can cause frostbite and trigger shivering, which produces more heat. Fan the person to increase airflow and encourage evaporation. Do not give fluids by mouth if they're unconscious or confused. You don't want them choking. Keep monitoring their temperature if you can, and stop cooling once it drops below 38 degrees Celsius, 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, to avoid overcooling. The goal is to bring the core temperature down quickly but safely. Once professional help arrives, the treatment typically continues with intravenous fluids to restore hydration and electrolyte balance. In the hospital, doctors may use more advanced cooling methods like cold water immersion, ice packs, or specialized cooling blankets. They'll also monitor for complications such as organ damage, heart arrhythmias, or blood clotting issues. After the acute phase, the patient is usually observed for 24 to 48 hours to ensure that the internal organs are recovering. Rest, rehydration, and a gradual return to normal activity are key. Most people recover fully with prompt treatment, but delayed care can lead to lasting problems like kidney injury or neurological deficits. Let's bust a few myths. Myth 1. You only get heat stroke in the desert. Wrong. Any hot, humid environment can be a trap, even a stuffy indoor room. Myth 2. Drinking ice-cold water will instantly cure heat stroke. Not quite. While hydration helps, you need rapid cooling of the body, not just a cold drink. Myth 3. If you're sweating, you can't have heat stroke. False. Exertional heat stroke often occurs with heavy sweating, especially early on. Myth 4. You can't get heat stroke in the shade. Still false. Prolonged exposure to high temperatures, even in shade, can overwhelm your cooling system. Knowing the truth can keep you safe. Picture this. Jack decided to host a hot dog challenge in his backyard. Literally, hot dogs on the grill, while he tried to beat the heat by doing jumping jacks in a full winter coat. Within 20 minutes, he was wobbling, slurring his words, and declaring the hot dogs were too cold. Long story short, an ambulance ride later, and he now owns a fan that he actually uses. Moral of the story: don't try to be a human kebab. Here's a startling number. In the United States alone, heat waves cause about 1,200 deaths per year, and heat-related illnesses account for thousands of emergency room visits. The CDC reports that the majority of heat stroke cases happen in the first few days of a heat wave before people get used to the new normal. In 2022, a record-breaking heat wave in the Pacific Northwest pushed temperatures above 46 degrees Celsius, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, in some spots, leading to a spike in heat-related emergencies. Even in cooler climates like the UK, heat waves are becoming more common, and hospitals are seeing a rise in heat stroke admissions. In fact, a 2021 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that the risk of heat-related illness jumps by 30% for every 5 degrees Fahrenheit rise above the average summer temperature. So whether you live in a scorching desert or a normally mild region, it pays to be prepared. Thanks for watching. If this video helped you understand heat stroke a little better, give it a thumbs up and share it with friends who might need a reminder. And don't forget to subscribe for more health and safety content. See you in the next one. Bonus fact: the highest recorded human body temperature was a jaw dropping 115 degrees Fahrenheit, 46.1 degrees Celsius, in a 1980 case. Yes, that's hotter than most saunas. The patient survived, thanks to rapid medical intervention. Imagine walking past your mother in the street and not recognizing her. Now imagine doing it again, and again, and again, every day, your entire life. Looking at the face of someone you've known since before you could speak. Someone who fed you, bathed you, read you bedtime stories, and your brain simply says, "Sorry, don't know who this is." This isn't a plot twist from some mind-bending thriller. This is reality for millions of people around the world. It's called prosopagnosia. And today, we're going to break down exactly what it is, why it happens, how it feels, and what we can do about it. Welcome to What Is. Let's get into it. Definition: prosopagnosia. It sounds like something out of a medical drama, doesn't it? And in some ways, it kind of is. The word itself comes from the Greek prosopon, meaning face, and agnosia, meaning not knowing. Face blindness, pure and simple. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part that surprises most people. Prosopagnosia isn't about your eyes not working. It's not about poor vision or memory problems in the traditional sense. It's specifically about the brain's inability to process and recognize faces. Think about how incredible this is. Your eyes might be perfect. You might have a PhD in art history and remember the exact year Van Gogh painted Starry Night. But when you look at a face, your own brother's face, your best friend's face, the face you've seen thousands of times, your brain essentially throws up its hands and says, "I got nothing." Now here's something that blows people's minds. There are two main types of this condition. The first is called developmental prosopagnosia. This is when someone is born with it. Their face recognition system just never developed properly. They've literally never experienced recognizing faces the way most people do. For them, this isn't a loss. It's simply how they've always lived. The second type is acquired prosopagnosia. This happens after brain damage, usually to a specific area in the fusiform gyrus, which scientists sometimes call the fusiform face area, or FFA. This little region, tucked away in the bottom of your brain, is basically your face recognition hardware. When it gets damaged through a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, or even certain degenerative diseases, the software stops working properly. And here's the wild part. You can have prosopagnosia and not even know it. Because if you've never been able to recognize faces, you have no reference point for what's normal. You just think everyone else is somehow magically doing something you can't figure out. It's like being born without a sense of smell and realizing only later that other people can detect when the milk is off. How it presents. The experience. Let's paint a picture. You're at a party, or let's say a work conference, which is somehow even more terrifying. People keep coming up to you, they smile, they say your name, they act like your long-lost best friends, and you have absolutely no idea who they are. Is this the guy from accounting? The guy who sat next to you at that one meeting 3 years ago? Is this someone you went to college with? Is this your dentist? Wait, no, your dentist is a woman. Or is that wrong? Did you switch dentists? Why are they looking at you like you should know them? Why are they saying, "We should catch up sometime," when you have no clue what you're catching up from? This is the lived experience of prosopagnosia. And it's not just strangers or acquaintances. Research shows that many people with prosopagnosia struggle to recognize family members, even their own children. A mother might pick her child up from school and not recognize them until the child waves or speaks. A father might walk right past his own daughter in a mall, because to his brain, she's just another kid. Now here's where it gets really tricky. Because faces aren't the only thing we use to recognize people. We use voices, we use gait, how someone walks, we use clothing, hairstyles, body shape. And people with prosopagnosia often become incredibly good at using these other cues as compensation. So you might recognize your boss not by his face, but by his distinctive walk, the slight limp from his football injury. You might recognize your sister-in-law by her bright red handbag she never goes anywhere without. You might know your neighbor because she always wears that purple cardigan and talks extremely loudly on her phone every morning at 8 a.m. But here's the problem. These cues change. People get new haircuts, they lose weight, they change their style, they wear different clothes on different days, and suddenly all your compensation strategies are useless. The social consequences can be profound. Imagine avoiding social situations entirely because you're terrified of not recognizing someone. Imagine lying to your friends. "Oh, I'm so sorry, my phone was on silent. I didn't see you wave." When the truth is, you had no idea who that person was. even when they were standing 3 feet away. Imagine the anxiety of every new interaction, every casual encounter, every "Hey, how have you been?" And it's not just other people's faces. Many people with prosopagnosia also struggle with their own face. They can't recognize themselves in photos. They catch their reflection in a mirror and don't immediately know that's them. Some people describe the experience of looking at old photographs of themselves and feeling nothing, like they're looking at a stranger, because in many ways they are. Research from Harvard University, led by Dr. Howard Nussbaum, suggests that up to 1 in 50 people may have some form of prosopagnosia. That's roughly 2% of the population. To put that in perspective, that's more people than have Parkinson's disease, more than have schizophrenia, yet almost no one has heard of it. If this is resonating with you, or if you know someone who might struggle with this, you're not alone. Prosopagnosia is more common than people think, and the good news is there's help. Keep watching, and we'll get into coping strategies and what the future holds. But first, let's talk about something fascinating: how prosopagnosia links to other conditions. Links to other conditions. Here's where things get really interesting from a scientific standpoint. Prosopagnosia doesn't exist in a vacuum. It often shows up alongside other conditions, and understanding these connections helps us understand the broader picture of how our brains work. The most well-known connection is with autism spectrum disorder. Now, researchers aren't saying everyone with prosopagnosia is autistic, or that all autistic people have prosopagnosia. But numerous studies have found significantly higher rates of prosopagnosia in the autistic populations. Some research suggests up to 30 to 40% of autistic individuals may have some degree of face recognition difficulties. The theory is that both conditions involve differences in how the brain processes social information. Faces are fundamentally social objects. We read emotions from them. We identify people from them. We navigate entire social ecosystems using them. And if your brain is wired somewhat differently for social processing, face recognition can be one of the casualties. But here's the plot twist. Prosopagnosia is also strongly linked to something called theory of mind deficits. Theory of mind is our ability to understand that other people have their own thoughts, beliefs, and perspectives that might differ from ours. It's what allows us to lie, to trick people, to understand jokes, to predict what someone will do next. Research has found that people with prosopagnosia sometimes struggle with theory of mind tasks. Not always, but enough to suggest these brain systems are connected. The fusiform face area, that little region dedicated to recognizing faces, seems to work closely with other social cognition networks in the brain. When one goes down, sometimes others follow. There's also emerging research connecting prosopagnosia to memory conditions. Some studies have found that people with prosopagnosia perform differently on certain memory tasks. Not necessarily worse, but differently. The memory systems for faces and the memory systems for other types of information might share some cognitive real estate. Perhaps most surprisingly, prosopagnosia has been linked to spatial navigation difficulties. The same area of the brain involved in face recognition, the fusiform gyrus, is also involved in recognizing places and objects. Some people with prosopagnosia also report getting lost more easily, struggling to remember routes, or having difficulty recognizing familiar locations. And here's a fascinating connection that researchers are still unpacking. Some studies suggest a link between prosopagnosia and anxiety and depression. Now, this could be chicken and egg. Is prosopagnosia causing social anxiety because of all the embarrassing recognition failures? Or is there something more fundamental linking these conditions? The research is still evolving. One thing is clear: prosopagnosia isn't just about not recognizing faces. It's a window into how our brains handle social information, object recognition, and spatial processing. And studying it helps us understand the incredible complexity of the 3-pound universe between our ears. And from a personal perspective, I have this too. I also have aphantasia, which is the lack of a mind's eye. This means I have no visual memory, and therefore have no visual record to recall faces. If you would like to know more about aphantasia, drop a comment below, and we can do a video on that one. Coping mechanisms. Now for the practical stuff. If prosopagnosia is a fact of life, how do people deal with it? The first line of defense is usually compensation strategies, and people with prosopagnosia become incredibly creative. Remember those alternative cues we talked about? Voices, gaits, clothing, hairstyles? Many people deliberately focus on these and turn them into conscious strategies. Some people develop what researchers call truly bizarre compensation strategies. One study documented a person who recognized his wife by the sound of her earrings jingling. Another person recognized his daughter by the specific way she carried her backpack on her left shoulder. Someone else recognized his best friend only when the friend wore his lucky blue jacket. Technology has become a game changer. Social media and smartphones have given people with prosopagnosia incredible tools. Facebook recognizes faces in photos and suggests tags. Your phone can put names to faces in your camera roll. You can scroll through someone's Instagram before seeing them in person and study their photos like a detective preparing for a stakeout. Some people use name tags or introduce themselves first in every interaction. Hi, I'm so sorry. I have a condition that makes it hard for me to recognize faces. Could you remind me who you are? This takes bravery and vulnerability, but it beats the alternative of pretending and getting caught. There are also specific therapies being developed. Some researchers are working on face training programs, essentially teaching people with prosopagnosia to use different features for recognition. Instead of trying to recognize the whole face, which seems to be the broken system, these programs teach people to focus on specific features: the nose, the ears, the eyebrows, and how those features are configured. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, can help with the anxiety and social avoidance that often accompanies prosopagnosia. Learning to manage the emotional fallout, the embarrassment, the shame, the fear of social situations can be just as important as trying to improve face recognition itself. Support groups, both online and in person, have been transformative for many people with prosopagnosia. There's something powerful about realizing you're not alone, that there are other people who understand exactly what you're going through. The phrase, "I thought I was the only one," comes up constantly in prosopagnosia communities. And perhaps most importantly, education and awareness help. When family members, friends, and co-workers understand prosopagnosia, they can help. They can introduce themselves. They can not take it personally when you don't recognize them. They can be patient. Understanding transforms potential humiliation into manageable social navigation. Future. So what does the future hold for understanding and treating prosopagnosia? The research is accelerating. Brain imaging technologies like fMRI have allowed scientists to study the fusiform face area in unprecedented detail. We're learning not just what is broken in prosopagnosia, but exactly where it's broken and potentially how to fix it. One exciting avenue is targeted cognitive training. If the face recognition system can be retrained to use different pathways, different features, different strategies, it's possible that some aspects of prosopagnosia could be improved. Research is ongoing, and while we're not talking about a cure yet, we're talking about meaningful improvements. Genetic research is revealing potential hereditary components of prosopagnosia. Understanding the genes involved could lead to earlier identification and intervention. If parents know their child has a genetic predisposition to prosopagnosia, they can develop support strategies from an early age. Virtual reality and AI are opening new possibilities. AI systems can now identify faces with superhuman accuracy. Could those systems be integrated into glasses or contacts to help people with prosopagnosia? The technology isn't there yet, but the concept is being explored. Awareness is growing. What was once a virtually unknown condition is slowly entering public consciousness. More people are getting diagnosed, more resources are becoming available, and more importantly, the stigma is beginning to fade. In the future, we might see prosopagnosia screening become standard in certain contexts. Children starting school might be assessed for face recognition difficulties. Workplace accommodations might become more common. And the phrase "I have prosopagnosia" might become as understood as "I need glasses." If you think you might have prosopagnosia, or if this video helped you understand someone who does, don't suffer in silence. Talk to your doctor. Reach out to prosopagnosia organizations and support groups. There are resources available, and you don't have to navigate this alone. And if you found this video helpful, hit that like button. Subscribe to What Is if you haven't already. Because learning about the world and the incredible quirks of human brains is what we're all about. Now before we go, here's that bonus fact I promised, one that didn't make it into the rest of the script. Bonus fact. Here's something wild. Some researchers believe that famous physicist Richard Feynman may have had prosopagnosia. In his autobiography, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, he describes consistently failing to recognize people he'd met before, including confusing famous colleagues with other people. While he was never formally diagnosed, the term wasn't widely used during his lifetime. His experiences described in the book match many of the classic presentations of prosopagnosia. So if you ever felt like you couldn't recognize your colleagues or kept embarrassing yourself at parties, maybe you're an incredibly distinguished company. One of the greatest minds of the 20th century might have been right there with you. Thanks for watching. See you next time on What Is.